Raise a glass to the past, present, and future you with actress Danielle Moné Truitt as she dives into the beautiful complexities of life's journey through real, transparent conversation. All the women I've been made me into.
Hey y'all, it's Danielle Moné Truitt, and this is All the Women I've Been, where we celebrate our past, present, and future us with real and raw conversation. I have the honor and pleasure of talking to one of my good friends. His name is Chike. You might have seen him on a show called La Brea on NBC. He is a he, but we welcome the men here as well. Can't wait for you to experience our amazing conversation. All the women I've been. Chike!
Hey.
Thank you so much.
Of course. I'm so happy to be
being
here.
here. I'm happy you're here. Oh. Okay, so I'm really excited you're here. We met at the International Emmys.
That's right.
Right? We got to introduce. What did we do?
We were presenting an award?
Yes, we did. We
Yeah.
presented an award together.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, so I had no idea. I had never done anything like that before. So I was excited to do it or whatever. And they were like, oh, you have to meet, your partner for, presentation. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I met you. And I have to say, when I first met you, I just immediately felt so comfortable around you and safe.
Yeah.
Like you were just so warm, and I was like, oh, I'm not nervous to do this. Because we're doing it together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I immediately felt like you were a friend, and I did not know you from anywhere. So, I'll get back to that a little later with some of the stuff I want to talk to you about, but I think that's a beautiful quality to have,
I think my mum would be very proud to hear you say it. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, and so then we presented, and then we just kind of kept in touch.
That's
so
right,
I'm
yeah.
happy that we've become friends,
Likewise.
and that you're joining me for this. So the podcast is named All the Women I've Been. And clearly, you're not a woman, but I want to have all kinds of people on the show. It's all the women I've been because I'm a woman, but regardless of the gender, we have all experienced different sides of ourselves, different experiences in life, different seasons and stuff like that. And so I'm just really interested in just talking to awesome people who are remarkable in their own right and have different life experiences. And so I just thought you would be a great guest to have. I know we went to lunch one time, and I just had the best time just talking to you
Likewise.
about life, and about our journey with working for NBC and acting and stuff like that. So I just want to do a little bit more of that, on the show.
Such an honor. Thank you.
Yay. So I guess we can start, since it is called All the Women I've Been, and this is, I love women and I love to empower us. I guess I want to ask you, what women have made a huge impact in your life? And it could be more than one, but just talk to me about some of the women that have influenced you the most in your life and how they've been influences.
It's really easy to start at the beginning, I guess, with my mom and my two sisters. I'm between two sisters. I have a younger brother as well. But from my very formative years, from as early as I can remember up until sort of the end of school, my older sister was just everything to me. She really was. We're only 15 months apart, and she was just a very outgoing, she is still a very outgoing person, but as a kid, she was very sure of herself. She was very articulate and very, I don't know, she was just the bravest, smartest person I knew.
I love it.
And we're such a different time now, but my dad was retired. My dad was sort of semi-retired, but he would work occasionally. My mum was working 3 or 4 jobs, and we would just be on our own a lot, me and my older sister. And Anne, my older sister, would just look after me. She would prepare dinner when we were 5 and 6 years old.
Oh my God,
And
how awesome.
mum and dad would be out, going to work and what have you. And my whole world was my older sister. So that's where it starts for me. And my mother, of course, I'm sure we'll get into our careers a little bit as well, but Mom took me and Anne to the theatre when I was 6 years old for the first time, and that was like a life-changing experience. And I think, you know, growing up, we grew up in South London, and it was a very sort of separate existence in lots of ways, because in my household, we were very Nigerian, just entirely Nigerian. That was my only sort of view of the world.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I left my house, it was a very different experience
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s in London. And so I'm really grateful to my mum for giving us such a strong sense of self, strong sense of culture, of who we are, of where we're from, and a strong sense of unity as well. It's so funny, I've told this story a few times, but it's one that gets more and more relevant the more my life goes on. But my mum, I'm one of four, like I said now, but my mum, when I was probably late teens or mid-teens, my mum brought us all together as a family. She brought one of these African brooms out, which is like lots of sticks tied together. We were in London, but she still had one of these African brooms. And she held it in front of us, and she took out one of the sticks and asked us all to break the stick, and we all broke them very easily. And then she gave us the whole bundle of sticks as the broom, and she said, now try and break this. And we all tried and couldn't break it. And the Igbo parable, as it goes, is that, you know, the family has to be like that, like separate. You're very easy to break, or very easy to manipulate and shift, but together you're very strong. And I think we've all sort of taken that on board. So yeah, those are two women straight off the bat who I feel.
I love that. Before we started rolling, I told you remind me a little bit of my brother, and me and my brother are 15 years apart. 15 months apart.
Really? Wow. 15
months apart as well. Yeah.
That's so funny.
I love the fact that as a young boy, you got to see your older sister be smart and strong, and like sometimes those are the we associate those type of things with like masculinity. You know what I'm saying? And I just love that you got to see your older sister be that and admire that. You know what I mean?
For sure. I think back to childhood, and because Anne was popular, and because she was, like I say, so smart and articulate, and she was street smart. She knew how to look after us.
Yeah.
I definitely had a lot of bullying, racism that I had to contend with, but I'm sure it was a lot less because Anne was there, especially when we were in this, we call it sort of junior school, but sort of middle school, elementary school. Yeah. When we were younger, because she was always there, like around, I just kind of feel like I got a few passes, which I was really happy about. But yeah, that was what I knew. That was my whole world.
Right.
And I've been really fortunate to this day to have very, very close female friends. I just always have.
Yeah.
I started really taking acting seriously when I was about 17. I was always doing it, but I got into this youth theatre company called the National Youth Music Theatre in the UK. They audition like 3,000 kids from all over the country. Yeah. And the year that I started, only 3 kids got in of the 3,000. And one of the others was an actress called Gugu Mbatha-Raw, incredible actress, and one of my closest friends to this day.
I love it.
I think I thought of her because your question was, she's the first person that came to my mind. Yeah. Because we have sort of grown in parallel in this industry. We both started our careers in the UK. We were both doing theatre and all these things we really loved and wanted to do. And then we both moved to the US around the same time and have had a sort of very parallel life. But to be able to watch her from a really young age, from 16 really, the work ethic and the desire and the curiosity. And I remember she was playing Ophelia opposite Jude Law in Hamlet. She started in the West End, they brought her to Broadway. We were roommates at the time, so we were roommates throughout our 20s really. And she read these tomes of books about psychology and about the things that Ophelia was going through. And I just think watching her do that when we were young, and also I have my own desire, my own set of sort of thoughts around what we do. But I definitely know that we were a good impression, we were good for each other, I think, in our 20s and have been for our whole lives. So yeah, it's another one.
I just love this. So I'm not surprised that when I met you, I felt the way I did from what you just told me about the relationship you have with your mom, the relationship you had with your sister, you know, and that you still have with them. And then how you have a lot of female friends. And I think that's I really admire that a lot when I meet men who are able to have women as friends, like platonic friends where there's no extra
hanky-panky
stuff going on. Because I mean, when you're a woman in this world, you're in the industry especially, it's hard to trust a lot of men because you never know like what their actual angle is or if they want to be in touch with you because they want to work with you or really genuinely get to know you as a person or if they're trying to hit it. You know what I mean? Like you just...
Yeah. You know, it's so funny. I think about that quite a lot now at this stage of my life because something that theatre gave me, something that this profession has given me from a really young age. Like I said, I was really young when I started. And when you're 12, 13, 14, I think lots of boys socialize around boys and they do sports or whatever it might be. And the thought of talking to a girl when you're 12 or 13 can be terrifying for some boys.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case for me. You know, I was always around women. I was always around girls. I was always the one or two boys doing drama, doing dance, and so when I went to dance school when I was in my middle teen years, and I would have to dance with all the girls because there was only two boys who were there.
Right.
So I would always get sort of the prominent roles in the recitals or whatever, and was always having to lift the girls and do all the things, and then you just get used to there not being a mystique around someone of the opposite sex. And,
it's not always, it doesn't always have to be sexual. It can be you actually enjoy that person's company for who they are.
And I remember really clearly, so I went to an all boys high school. It's much more common in the UK than it is here. And there was a girls' high school sort of just down the block. It's where my older sister went there. And the boys and girls would come together to do a play every year, every summer. And when the girls would come in for rehearsals, like all the boys would be like looking and on alert. And then they would come over and give me a hug and give me a kiss, and then they'd be like the guys would look at me like, how do you know these strange creatures? But no, I think just from an early age, you get to understand. And in theatre, I think in the best sense, it's a really truly collaborative form, you know. And if you're doing it young, then you get to learn how to be collaborative early. And I feel very blessed for that.
Now, how do you navigate that when you are dating somebody and you have all these female friends? Is it like an issue?
It's a good question. I think I've definitely learned through hard-won experience that it's really important to make the person you're with feel special. Like they are the person you're with for a reason.
Right.
I think I definitely have learned that the hard way over the years, but that's just kind of a given now for me at this stage.
Yeah, like maturing, growing up, maturing.
And I'm sure it's still hard to have, as many female friends around as I do or have had in my life. But yeah, I think you get better at articulating what it is, why, that person's your special person. And,
I've talked to so many guys and so what I notice is most women are completely cool with like, most women believe that men and women can have platonic friendships. Like most of us are like, yeah, of course we can have, but then you talk to a lot of guys and they're like, no. They're like, nah. Any guy who is friends with you, if you gave him a shot, he'd take it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like so I wonder why do you think guys have such a hard time believing that platonic, is it just the way most guys like?
I think it comes down to how we socialize. Look, the locker room, like sports, has quite a lot to answer for male culture in general. I think, especially if you play it if you're around a lot of boys or men growing up, men just relate to each other differently. Yeah. And especially when you get to an age where you're then talking about the opposite sex, but. Again, for me, I was so much younger, and it was innocent, and it was just there wasn't any of that extra added thing. Right. Of course, that came into play at a particular point, and gosh, I remember so clearly like how hard it is when the hormones are all raging and you're really, you're in such an intimate space with people in the theatre anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I think I understand why men might have that viewpoint.
Yeah,
but it hasn't been my experience.
I just think it's important for men and women to have platonic relationships with one another because there's so much we can learn from one another. Like I think we're more alike than different. Like that's what that's what I'm coming into the knowledge of as I get older. So in my like dating relationships, and even my dad will tease me and my sisters about the like, oh, my daughters are so much like me. Like, just the way we've kind of navigated the world, the way that we've navigated dating and stuff. Like when I was growing up, I didn't care about boys like in a boy crazy way, Like I was very much into my friendships with my friends, whether they were boys or girls. Most of my friends have been girls, of course, but dating was not like my main thing, So if I had a boyfriend or whatever, and when you're young, it's like, oh, here's my boyfriend for 2 weeks, and then moved on to something else, But even as I started to mature and get older, I wasn't the type that was like, oh, I'm just devastated over this relationship with this boy that didn't work out. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, oh, there's another or more boys out there. Like, so sometimes I get, they'll be like, oh, you act like a guy. Like, you have the mindset. I have the mindset in certain areas that one would attribute to a male. Like, oh, that's the way a male.
Yeah, in a traditional sense.
Yes, would act.
And I feel like, conversely, weirdly, maybe male friends of mine might say that I have more of the feminine attributes in my, I don't know, but
right. So I'm like, well, maybe it isn't that I act like a guy. No. Like I'm just me. Yeah. Like I'm just acting like me. And men and women flow between masculine and feminine energy, right. And it's not that one is. Because I'm a woman, I'm only supposed to function in a certain type of way. Right. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I love that most men have a hard time even admitting that they flow in a feminine energy sometimes. Yeah. Like,
I feel like, look, I'm fortunate in that I am quite manly looking or feeling in a way. And so it's that might counter the emotional EQ or what have you. But yeah, look, I was raised the way I was raised. I found my profession very early. I threw myself into it and learned everything I learned through that lens. So
yeah,
it's I don't know. Maybe at a point you start to you think about. I definitely have thought about. Maybe I need to be more this, like alpha or whatever. But
now, what was it? What was it that made you feel that way?
I think
the society.
Maybe less society. Maybe it was a specific relationship that I'd been in at the time, and I don't think necessarily that there was anything that she was saying to make me feel this way. But right. There's you're aware of.
You question, you question, and I've had those times like I'm like, well, maybe I need to be a little bit more girly. Like I've always been a tomboy. I mean, I am girly. Like the way I dress, I definitely have a sultry, feminine vibe to myself. But I also can be with the boys. Right. Like I used to play ball. Like I have that tomboy side to me. Yeah. And the older that I get, and it has aided me in my acting too. Like it's funny because the roles that I get cast in aren't necessarily like who I really am as a person. Like I'm much softer than Sergeant Bell or all these police type shows. I keep getting cast. I'm like, why? I don't know why I keep getting cast in these roles, but it's just funny, like the things that you exude that might not necessarily be who, like you're saying, you're like, you have this manly, you're tall, you're built, but then you have like this softness to you that is a really awesome quality to have,
I think now that I'm thinking about it, I remember really clearly. So one of my very best friends, he's an actor, his name's Ben Barnes. His mother is a sex and relationship therapist.
Okay.
And so when we were kids, basically like teens into my 20s, I always felt like I had Trisha, her name is, her viewpoint, her perspective, and what incredible thing to have as a young man coming up, to have a world-class therapist help you and guide you in certain ways. And it was never, I never asked, and she never sort of offered. It was just conversations we would get into.
Right.
And I remember calling her. I was doing a job away from home. I remember being in a hotel, calling her because I was having some trouble with my girlfriend at the time. And I think I remember saying something like, she just thinks I'm too sensitive, or something like that. And Trisha said to me, in the long sort of span of her career, helping men and women, specifically in relationships, I'm sure everyone in relationships, she said, though, when it comes to men and women, if the man, in most of the occasions she had dealt with, if the man was more sensitive, more able to articulate himself in that sense, it would have saved a lot of marriages. It would have saved a lot of relationships. So never let anyone tell you that you're too sensitive, or that sensitivity or vulnerability is a bad thing. And I just have always sort of kept that, and I think benefited from the wisdom in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, that probably plays out in other aspects.
Well,
of
you're a
my life.
Pisces too, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I am. Our birthdays are coming up.
Yes. When's your birthday?
18th of March.
Yes. Okay, I'm before you. I'm March 2nd. Yes. Yes, my Pisces brother.
I love
See, we are full of just.
Everyone gives us a hard time.
They do. I don't understand. I don't understand it. I don't understand why they do. We're like lovers. We love everybody, and I think the sensitivity is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it's a very beautiful thing. Okay, Chike. So I want to ask you a question. We've talked a lot about the platonic friendships. You say you have a lot of girls as women as friends. So could you just give me your thoughts on how would you be able to pinpoint a man that would be dangerous for a woman friend of you, like of yours? Like you have, if you have a woman that's your friend, she's dating somebody, and you're like, he ain't it, sis. Like how can a man see another man and know, like, he's a dangerous person for you to be around? He doesn't have your best interests in mind.
That's a deep one, right? Because look, people are people. Everyone's on their own struggle, on their own path, and I think that the thing that I just had this recently, probably within the last 6 months or a year, someone asked, obviously no names, but asked about someone who I knew, and without wanting to be too judgmental, because people have their own struggles. It's about, I think, men who are. This word gets used a lot these days, narcissism. It's used a lot, but some of the traits of narcissism can be very sort of insightful as to where a person might lean.
Yes.
I think men, and people in general, but men, as your question is this, who focus on themselves a lot, I think that can be indicative of other things.
Yes.
Who see the world through only their lens.
Yes.
I think, I don't know if I say the word dangerous, but it's certainly not a helpful trait.
Right.
And that's certainly, look, we're all human. I get it. I'm sure I've had parts of my life where, in fact, I know I have, where I've had to focus or think
on myself,
about
on yourself.
But not. I think, in the sense that I mean, it's just not a helpful thing. It's not a helpful character
Not at the
trait.
detriment to someone else.
I play. It's such a funny thing to say because we're actors. It's make believe. But I played a malignant narcissist in a film a couple of years ago. Megan Good, wonderful actress, played my wife, and it was hard. Like, I spoke to lots of psychiatrists about malignant narcissism. He was a surgeon as well, and funny enough, it's a very high trait in surgeons. When you think about someone who has
saving
someone's
life in their hands,
like it can build this God complex, and so it was not a headspace that I enjoyed being in. But of course, you want to give your all to the work. But yeah, I learned a lot. I definitely challenged myself a lot as far as what traits or the beginning of traits might I have in my character, and try and let those things go.
Right.
But I think also, quite frankly, a lot of it is, men develop later. We're just slower than women.
That's true.
And I think you can't give people too much of a hard time if their intentions and actions are very different. And I think, your actions matter, of course.
Yeah.
But men work things out a little later.
Yeah.
And look, I really hope we can live in a world where we're a bit more sort of, forgiving isn't the right word, but if people are willing and wanting to make amends for the mistakes, to sort of create healing where they've caused harm.
Yes, because we've all caused harm to people, like you said, whether it was intentional or not. I know I have, and I know they also say actors are a bit narcissistic.
It hasn't been my experience.
But
in general,
right? But that's something that they say, that we are, because we have to. I guess because of what we do, for what they're looking at is the fame and stuff, and most of us don't even ever experience that type of fame. There's like a very small percentage of actors that experience that. You know what I mean? Like people recognize us every once in, if I go somewhere, somebody will recognize me every blue moon, but it's not like I have gobs of people standing outside of my.
Thank God.
Okay, because I don't want it. Okay, I don't want that kind of attention. But I think, like you said, narcissism is thrown around a lot. And it is a thing, but at the same time, there are people, like you said, trying to work through things in their life and trying to figure it out.
I don't want to give people a pass, because we have to be aware of our actions in this world. We just do. But I do err on the side of, look, if that's a trait, it might lead to something else. Just if there's that trait there.
Yes.
But mostly, I feel as though I would love to be in a world where we can, for the people who really are seeking forgiveness for the things that they've done.
Yes, for sure. That we would give it to them, because I want that forgiveness for myself, for the things I've done. So I don't want to not give it to someone else.
For real.
I think one of the reasons why platonic friendships between men and women are so important is for the question I just asked you about someone who might be dangerous. I think there's so many men, if we had them as friends, or I guess I wonder, do men feel comfortable telling their homegirl, the dude that you're dating is whack? Because listen, I dated someone in the last 2 years, that I wish I had a male friend. Well, I won't say I wish I had a male friend. I did have a male friend. Once I told them what was going on, they were like, "What?
He's not the one."
Yeah, three. I have three. Let me think. I have two really close platonic male friends, and then I have a few other ones that aren't as close, but they're good friends. But there was 3 guys but it wasn't until after the said incident happened, and I told them about it, that they then said, I ain't like that nigga. I ain't like that dude anyway. Like, you know what I'm saying?
It's a hard thing, isn't it?
It's like, well, why y'all didn't say something before?
You don't want to say that and then be up at their wedding in a few months' time.
But I'm like, sometimes you wish, I'm just the type of person where, you can pull me to the side. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to listen to you completely. I might not. I might be, you Pisces, we be in once we get in our, love thing, we don't really want to hear.
Right.
And we'll listen to it, but we'll be like, oh, okay, thank you so much. Love you too, but I'm doing this thing, But it's like, dang, sometimes you feel like, why couldn't y'all have warned me of what you saw in that person before he broke my heart?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. I do. It's a tricky one. I funnily enough, had a sort of slightly opposite experience recently. I tend not to give friends love advice. I think we're all on our own journey. Yeah. It is what it is. I'll be supportive and I'll be there and I'll give my opinion if it's sought for.
Right.
But recently, 2 friends of mine have gotten together, a guy and a girl, and I've known this guy for a long time. And I just feel as though he maybe wasn't being his best self. And a lot of my friends, female friends, were like, nope, he's not the one. But I knew a different side to him. So I could sort of play devil's advocate a little bit to the advice that she was receiving from other friends. But look, no one wants to call someone out and be like, nah, he's not. Well, maybe my female friends do. So maybe yours do too. But
I have some female friends that will do that. Like, he ain't it.
he ain't it. And look, sometimes that's helpful too. But
yeah, I see what you're saying though, because it's like we're grown, and so it's like if this is the person you're choosing, then I'm gonna support you in that.
Yeah.
And when some shit happens, then I will let you know. Like I kind of saw that coming.
Yeah.
So I understand both sides.
Yeah,
you know,
for real.
I definitely do understand both sides. Because you don't want to fall out with your friend either for giving unwarranted insight.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not if the person didn't ask.
For
you,
sure.
You know.
For sure.
So that makes sense.
Honestly, for the longest time, it was that thing of, but we might be at this person's wedding in a few years' time. So
right.
There's some words you just can't take back.
That's so funny. That's
yeah.
funny. That's true. Okay. So what's going on with you career-wise? What's happening? What's your creative endeavors? Not even career, but just creatively.
Creative's it's a good time to ask me that question because I love this job. You know, I love being an actor. I love being a storyteller. I love being an artist. I have my whole life. I was, like I said, 6 years old when I went to the theatre for the first time. I was sold. I knew that's what I wanted. I was very lucky to know from a very early age, and mostly things have been really great. You know, there are tough times, of course, there are in anyone's career. Yeah. I think the thing that I am learning now that I wish I'd learned earlier, but that I've always sort of maybe known in the back of my mind, is I don't think there's any such thing as just an actor anymore.
No.
I don't think there is, and I think it's wrong not wrong. Some people, that's great.
Yeah,
but I think actors do make great storytellers in general.
Yes.
Especially when you've gained some experience, had some insight into this world. So, you know, producing, writing, directing, all of the things it takes to make movies, television, theatre, I'm interested in all of it.
Love it.
And, you know, I've just finished this show La Brea on NBC. We were on the same network for a long time, and it's one of those jobs that from the outside, if there are actors listening, from the outside, it can feel so, you know, that's the thing that you're looking to do. Yeah. It was a wonderful thing to do not get me wrong. Yeah. But it's so nice to be on the other side of that, knowing that there is more out there. There's more out there. When I was young, the only definition really I had of being an actor was someone who got to do different things all the time.
Yes.
You know, and so that's
the fun of it.
That's the fun of it. You know,
playing different roles.
Playing that narcissist wasn't necessarily fun, but it was definitely such an interesting thing to explore. And I'm really grateful that Megan was such a generous scene partner because, man, that was some tough stuff we had to do on that film.
Right.
But it was, that's why you do it. You want to explore every facet of what it is to be a human being.
Right.
So,
and what things do you think you've learned from some of the characters that you've played? Like is there a role you've played that has really like changed you in a way or made you look at yourself in a deeper
I haven't thought about this for a long time. So I used to do a lot of theatre. I moved to the US, almost 15 years ago. And I was lucky that I had such a great sort of theatre upbringing in the UK, and I did lots of Shakespeare when I was a kid. When I was younger, came to the US and did a bunch with the Royal Shakespeare Company here in New York. And so I got a lot of experience quite young. I did this one play, one of the best playwrights, I think, the best American playwright, maybe outside of August Wilson, but Arthur Miller he wrote so deeply about the human experience. And it's so funny. I played this role, a play called All My Sons. I played this role called Chris Keller, who's the son. And he was such a sort of noble-hearted man. He saw the world in sort of black and white. There weren't very many shades of grey. And I think over the course of that whole play, maybe there was some understanding that came to him that, you know, the world isn't just like that. There is more to it. But I loved his sense of justice, and I think maybe I saw parts of that in myself at the time. It's probably in my early 30s when I did that play. Yeah. And then, you know, you go through some life and you get some hard knocks and you get some experience, and you sort of have to learn for yourself that there are shades of grey in the world. But I think I was very much like Chris in my 20s and early 30s. And I'm grateful for him because I'm
black and white. I think a lot of us
I'm grateful for people who especially when it comes to justice, to what's right, who are very sort of convicted about that.
Yeah.
It's very easy to not be.
Right.
I certainly feel like I learned a lot from that. And I've learned maybe to ease up a bit as well. As I've gotten to where I am now.
I have to say, I was like that in my 20s and 30s too.
I think it's a Pisces trait.
I was about to say, it's a Pisces trait. We're very just like, you gotta treat people right.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
Or do what's right. Treat people right. You know what I mean? And I still feel that way. But like you said, living more life, your own failures in life, you come to acknowledge like, ooh, yeah, life is a whole bunch of shades of gray.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of shades of gray. Okay, so for fun, I've never heard your American accent.
That is not happening on this podcast. It's one of those things.
Is that hard?
It's not hard. It's like if I had a script right here, I'd do it.
But you can't just say a sentence in an American accent.
I just don't know what it would do for us here.
I have always wanted to ask that because I know how hard it is for me to like go into a different accent that's not like unless it's like Southern or like, I mean, there are certain ones that I can do that I can just kind of drop into, but I can't drop into your accent. like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I can't do that.
It's one of those things for me as well. Like I was very lucky to be, get good training as a kid. And I've heard American accents a lot in my whole life.
Right.
And then I've lived here for a really long time.
And there's so many different ones.
And there are so many different ones. But no, to do it right now would just be...
I always wondered what that's like. Okay.
I'll do it for you another time.
Okay, but I do have a question. And it's a fun question. Or I think it's a fun question. If you could describe your ex as a food, what would you...
My ex-partner?
Your ex-partner. One of your ex-partners as a food, what would it be and why?
Oh, gosh, okay. I was just talking to an ex of mine the other day, who's a friend. And so I'm going to use a kind one because she's great.
Yeah, great. I love it.
As a food, I would say... Oh, gosh, this is tricky. It's good, but it's so hard. I'm just thinking of food that she likes. I think I would say something that's like sweet and salty, like two of the different things.
Like a kiwi?
Kiwi.
Oh, I love kiwi.
Something, yeah, so tangy.
Or like a
complex
key lime pie.
Something like that. Yeah. Okay. I'll go with that.
I love that. Have you been really good at keeping your exes as friends?
No, sometimes not, and sometimes it's not necessary.
Right.
But I do like people, and I think when you spend time with people, you're intimate with people, it sort of feels like it's a shame to me to throw away the good with the.
It was a time in your life. That's what I always say. Like, it was a time in my life that I spent with a particular person that you won't get back, but you also learn a lot of things.
So I had
in that time.
You definitely do. Sorry to interrupt, but I after the film I was mentioning earlier, where I played this malignant narcissist, I remember I sat on my front porch in LA, and I called an ex of mine from the UK because I was like, I didn't have any of these traits in my character, did I? And it was like a good relationship. We were young, but. Right. I just wanted to just check in and make sure.
Playing a role like that will make you want to do that.
Yeah.
You're like, dang, am I?
Yeah. So I was grateful. I was grateful for her perspective because look, there were only a few people who know me like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you, Chike. I've had such a great time talking to you, and it makes me feel good to know there are men out there that women can be safe around, that they can trust, that they can be friends with, whether you date and become friends or you just friends from the jump. I think it's very important for a lot of women to know that men like you exist because some of us have had some really hard and sad and traumatic experiences with men in our lives. So thank you for joining me and just sharing what you shared. Well, it was really awesome.
As a parting thought, I'd love to say that I'm so grateful that you're doing this, and I think it's important because, I feel very honoured that you think of me in that way. I really do, and I don't take it lightly. And I think it's you know, for me, again, growing up how I grew up, doing the things that I do for work, it's a tough space to be in at any, you know, at the best of times. And whether it's about gender or just about being a good, you know, leader or actor on set or on stage, that's just been my whole outlook, my whole life. So I'm not pandering to just women or anything.
Right.
It's the best way that I've learned to do good work.
Yeah.
And you know, the work means so much to me. It's not the whole of life, but it is a big part of life for me.
Yeah.
So if you can create an environment that people can come and be safe and do their best,
Yes.
then you always are a part of something that's better anyway. So
Yes.
I've been really lucky to have experienced that more than I haven't. So I'm grateful to continue to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
Peace.